How may I help you?
Janelle Romo?
That's me.
Okay. Janelle, I'm Constable White, Pace Regional Constable's Office. I've got some paperwork for you. Do you have an ID I can see, please?
Of course.
Constables are an integral part of the justice court system in the state of Arizona. The job of a constable varies depending on the county he or she works in. Hi, I'm Amy Murphy, and welcome to this special presentation of how your Arizona constables work. Two frequently asked questions are, what is a constable and what do they do? Today we'll not only answer those questions, but present some typical situations that involve your Arizona constable and what they do as elected officials serving you. Our Arizona constables service the many needs of our court and the citizens.
As a constable, we serve all the criminal and civil items that come out of justice court, lower courts of jurisdiction, municipal courts, superior court, out-of-state courts. We also do all the evictions in the county. We'll do property seizures to satisfy court orders, take those items and then auction them off. We will do all the civil paperwork for somebody suing somebody in court, somebody demanding something in court, a civil summons to appear. We also do the criminal summonses that arise out of the county attorney's office for all the criminal matters that occur within the county.
Constables have been working for the citizens and serving the courts of Arizona since territorial days. Did you know that both Wyatt and Virgil Earp were constables in Arizona? You can discover an in-depth history of constables in Arizona on our website at www.arizonaconstables.com and clicking on the Constable History link. Our constables are elected officials. Every 4 years, voters elect 2 precinct officers for every justice precinct in a county, a justice of the peace and a constable. Today, there are 78 justice precincts in Arizona. The constable and justice of the peace are truly the last elected officials of the justice system in Arizona, making them the only officials of the courts who are directly responsible to the voters. Constables are elected to reflect the values and concerns of the community they live in. The constables must live in the precinct where they are elected and attend to the justice courts in the precinct by serving documents signed by a justice of the peace or other competent authority. Constables stay knowledgeable about their duties by attending training every year. A mandatory basic training course for newly elected constables covering topics including civil and criminal process, conflict resolution, and firearm safety is approved by the Arizona Peace Officer Standards and Training Board, or AZ Post. Constables must attend the mandatory training course within 6 months after election. In subsequent years, constables must annually attend at least 16 hours of additional training approved by AZ Post. The constable's job takes them into the community, to the residences and workplaces of the people to be served.
Constables actually work on their own. There are times when we need to call local law enforcement, and that's strictly for a backup situation. If things are getting heated, if it looks like a fight's going to occur, or if there's criminal actions occurring. We've come across drug houses, meth houses. We run into suicides. We run into people that are armed and don't want to give up their property. We've had marijuana grows, just things that the traditional law enforcement run into all the time, we see all the time too.
Fees collected for services do not go to the constables, but rather the county's general fund. The Arizona legislature sets the fees collected by constables, as well as their salaries.
Arizona Revised Statutes 11445 requires that constables must collect fees for their service. This also requires sheriff civil deputies to collect fees for their service as well. The fees collected do not go directly to the constable, they are deposited into the county's general fund.
The highest priority of service for a constable is orders of protection and injunctions against harassment, because there is a potential for a plaintiff to be physically harmed. These orders are actually used to help law enforcement provide for the safety of people from certain individuals who have been deemed a threat by a judge. When an individual has been injured or threatened and requires an order of protection or an injunction against harassment, they will go to a court and petition a judge for the order. Orders of protection and injunctions can be granted by any court in Arizona, regardless of the location of the plaintiff or the defendant. Constables can serve any orders of protection and injunction against harassment, again, regardless of which court issued the order. Orders of protection are served without charge to the plaintiff. Because of possible dangers in serving orders of protection and injunctions against harassment, especially cases involving domestic violence issues, the constable will require the plaintiff to fill out additional information on the defendant. This information will be used to help the constable serve the order. The constable will also ask the plaintiff for contact information, such as phone numbers and addresses, so the constable can notify the plaintiff of the status of the service process. Any such information given to the constable will be kept confidential. If a constable is unable to make personal service of an order of protection or injunctions against harassment, the constable will notify the plaintiff. It is comforting to know that the order is good for 1 year from the date of issue. Once served, the order is also good for 1 year from date of service. Another important service constables provide are writs. Writs are orders issued by the court that require a constable to take some type of action. You see, a writ of restitution is an eviction. In Arizona, 78 constables serve and enforce an average of 2,500 evictions a month. When a landlord is forced to evict someone, they must go to court. The landlord must prove to a judge that the tenant has failed to pay the rent or has violated the lease. If the judge rules in favor of the landlord, they obtain a judgment against the tenant. The tenant has 5 days from the date of this judgment to move from the property. If the tenant fails to move, the landlord may now file for a writ of restitution from the court. A writ of restitution requires the constable to remove any and all occupants from the property listed on the writ and return possession of the property to the landlord. Once the judge signs the writ, the plaintiff will deliver it to the office of the constable in the justice precinct where the rental property is located. After receiving the writ, the constable will call and make arrangements to meet with the landlord or agent of the property to serve the writ on the defendant to carry out the eviction.
A standard eviction, and I'll just use me as an example, we will go to the property, let's say it's an apartment complex, we'll meet with the manager, we'll meet with the maintenance. If that's a residence, then we'll have a locksmith on hand, or the owner or the manager or the owner's representative will be on hand to change the locks. Traditionally, when we enter a residence, we knock and announce almost like a police search warrant, but not in that aggressive fashion where you're trying to clear the residence as fast as possible and secure stuff. But it's to let them know that we're there, who we are, and what we're doing.
There are 2 routine scenarios with evictions. If the tenant is home when the constable arrives, the constable will identify themselves, serve the tenant with a copy of the writ and judgment. The constable will then inform the tenant and all occupants that they are required to leave the property. If the tenant is in the process of moving, the constable may grant the tenant more time to finish moving. If the tenant or other occupants are not at the property when the constable arrives, the constable will still take possession of the property and return possession to the landlord. The constable will post the property with a warning notice, notifying that no one is allowed to be on the property without permission of the landlord. The constable will require the landlord to change the locks. In either case, after the constable serves the writ and takes possession of the property, the tenant has 21 days to retrieve their personal belongings from the property and must obtain their belongings from the plaintiff.
It's situational based. For the most part, they get anywhere from about 15 to 30 minutes to grab some personal property. Any medications, cell phone charger, car keys, important paperwork, change of clothes, anything for the kids that may not be home, coming home from school, anything that they need to get along for let's say 2 or 3 days so that they have those items. Now the landlord could also say, I want them evicted today, but let's give them 24 hours or let's give them the rest of the weekend to move their property and tell them to be out by 9 o'clock, on Monday morning or Tuesday morning or whatever day that they deem necessary. And we'll explain that to them. We'll explain to them that, they have 21 days from the date of service to get their property from the residence, and that's Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and they have to notify the owner or the manager prior to coming on property, otherwise they're subject to arrest for trespassing.
There are many other scenarios that affect evictions. Children, medical conditions, illegal drugs, and animals are just some of the issues that can change what happens during an eviction. And serving writs of restitution are dangerous. A constable will have to make decisions on how to serve a writ, by taking into consideration the safety of all persons and protection of property of both the plaintiff and defendant. Constables also serve arrest warrants issued from justice courts in Arizona. Sometimes these arrest warrants can be resolved without transporting the defendant to court. However, if the warrant cannot be resolved, the constables are required to take the defendant to appear in front of a justice of the peace upon arrest. The justice of the peace will then decide what actions to take. They may provide conditions of release for the defendant or direct the constable to transport the defendant to a jail facility. These are just some of the duties of the constable that outline the most visible services they perform. It is interesting to know that constables not only serve court process from Arizona justice courts, but also from courts all over the country. However, serving orders of the court has a hazardous side.
A gunman had killed 2 people, including a local county constable, and wounded 2 police officers before being fatally shot today near the campus of Texas A&M. That constable, identified as Brian Bachman, was serving eviction papers at a home in College Station, Texas, when the shooting occurred. Police who responded were also themselves fired upon.
Since territorial days, 5 Arizona constables have been killed while performing their duties, and they are remembered on the National Law Enforcement Memorial in Washington, D.C. We're near the end of our program, but here's a final question that is often asked. Why are constables elected? Well, constables have extreme powers to seize personal property when given certain writs. So when the law gives someone the authority to seize personal property, that person should be accountable to the public. Through the election process, the public decides to give or take away that responsibility. Should there be a complaint against a constable for his or her actions or inactions, the Constable's Ethics Board is ready to hear and resolve complaints. Your constable is an effective part of your county government and is here to serve you, the public. Thank you for letting us share this information with you today. If you would like additional information regarding Arizona Constables, please visit the Arizona Constables Association website at www.arizonaconstables.com. I'm Amy Murphy. Thank you for watching this special presentation about your Arizona Constables.